This video was brought to you by Audible.com. Get 2 free audiobooks with a 30-day free trial. Link in the description below. Back in April of 2017, Kevin Feige said that Marvel has plans for Moon Knight. This mercenary-turned-hero hears voices and dispatches foes with all of the blood and violence of a Deadpool or Punisher. And he's a bit of a cult favorite. However, I wouldn't pre-order those tickets just yet. Feige was super vague with the details, so much so that he may not even be talking about a movie in this decade, and he may not be talking about a movie at all. So why am I telling you this? Well, there are 2 things that people know about Moon Knight. Number 1, he's Marvel's Batman. And number 2, he'll be in a movie real soon, you guys. So let's talk about it. Let's start with Moon Knight's origin story. It all began back in the 1930s.
Bill Swooft here for Scotch Tape, the hard-boiled, plenty rugged, clear tape that can instantly patch, bond, seal, and repair.
Back in the 1930s, Mark Spector's family fled Europe before the start of World War II. Yeah, that's the only justification I have for that skit. No regrets. Mark Spector was born in Chicago, Illinois, and he and his very religious father did not see eye to eye. Mark could not understand why his father refused to fight against the Nazis, and he came to see his father as a coward. This led Mark to reject his father's faith. He would go on to become a heavyweight boxer before joining the U.S. Marines, and a short time later, he found himself working for the Central Intelligence Agency, where he worked with his brother Randolph Spector and William Cross, who would eventually go on to become the villain Crossfire. Unfortunately, Mark's brother Randall was secretly smuggling weapons, and when Mark's girlfriend found out about this, she tried to turn Randall in. He responded by brutally murdering her, and so Mark Spector hunted down his own brother. And during the fight, a grenade exploded, and Randall was presumed dead. Understandably, Mark soured on the idea of working for the CIA and became a freelance soldier of fortune. He quickly garnered the reputation of a man willing to do anything for the right price.
While working in Africa, Spector met a French mercenary named Jean-Paul Duchamp, or Duchamp, as I've literally pronounced it my whole life until researching this video. They quickly became friends, and Spector nicknamed him Frenchie. Duchamp worked for Spector for many years, eventually serving as the pilot for Moon Knight's Moonchopter, a one-of-a-kind, custom-built helicopter. Thanos, eat your heart out. Spector came to work for a terrorist named Raoul Bushman, and that's when he started to grow a conscience. You see, Bushman was brutal. While in the Sudan, they stumbled upon an archaeologist named Dr. Peter Alurain, who was excavating the tomb of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh. Bushman murdered the doctor and plundered the tomb. Mark, bothered by his newly found conscience, tried to help Dr. Alurain's daughter Marlene escape. Bushman beat Mark, abandoning him in the desert. He left him, basically, to die. Barely conscious, he stumbled into the ancient tomb, seeking shelter from the cold of the desert night. Marlene and her father's men brought Mark to rest near the statue of the moon god Khonshu. Lying before the statue, Mark's heart stopped. That's when he saw a vision of the moon god offering him a second chance. Mark awoke from the vision, his heart once again beating, and he wrapped himself in the shroud that covered the statue, and from that moment on, he became Moon Knight, earthly avatar of the moon god Khonshu. Moon Knight found and defeated Bushman, and then returned to the United States with the moon god idol, where he, aided by Marlene, Frenchie, and a sizable fortune from his days as a mercenary, continued in his fight against the forces of evil. In order to gather intelligence, Spector created a couple of new personas. Stephen Grant was a rich high roller who rubbed shoulders with the elite in New York City, while Jake Lockley was a down-to-earth cab driver. This allowed Spector to gather investigation leads from the streets of the city to the boardrooms of Wall Street. However, switching back and forth between these personas did not do much for Spector's mental health, but we'll get into that later in the video.
As for the behind-the-scenes stuff, Moon Knight was originally created by writer Doug Moench and artist Don Perlin, and he made his first appearance in Werewolf by Night number 32 in August of 1975. And while this isn't strictly relevant to Moon Knight, it was pretty amazing to read through Werewolf by Night, the complete collection, and see just how many people in the Marvel Universe have fought this one specific werewolf. We've got the police and the military militia guys, of course, but also this literal cowboy who calls himself, and this is true, Old Joshua, some carny folk, Spider-Man, Hydra, Count Dracula, another werewolf, and Frankenstein's monster, which, actually, those last three make a lot of sense if you really think about it. There's also this character who refers to himself as Atlas the Avenger, which was weird because he looks exactly like the Toxic Avenger, who wouldn't be created until sometime around 1983, right before his 1984 cinema debut. I find this whole series to be endlessly fascinating. But right, Moon Knight. The character's popularity led Marvel to bring him back for several guest spots, and so this villain became a popular anti-hero, a blueprint that Deadpool would follow a couple of years later. In 1980, he was finally given his own series, but it would not be his last. So yeah, Mark Spector is often described as mentally ill, and it's sometimes difficult to tell what's real and what's in Mark's head, at least in the initial ongoing series starting in 1980. There's even some question as to whether or not Spector actually saw the moon god Khonshu at all. His vision could have easily been the crazed hallucinations of a man dying from exposure, especially since he'd just been beaten nearly to death by Bushmen. Other issues in Moon Knight's original run even hint that Mark Spector's multiple personalities may have been more than just a creative way to gather leads, but rather it may have been a way for Mark's various personalities to express themselves without garnering concern from Marlene and Jean-Paul. However, all of this is left ambiguous. The next series took a different angle and made Moon Knight into more of a traditional superhero. This removed the ambiguity, and Moon Knight was, for sure, the moon god Khonshu's Knight of Vengeance, no backsies. This is also where Moon Knight's moon-shaped throwing weapons and gadgets first came to prominence, and the source of the Batman comparisons. This new series didn't sell well, and only lasted for 6 issues. Moon Knight then went on to join the West Coast Avengers because all Marvel superheroes must be some kind of Avenger at some point. It's like a law or something. And also, Hawkeye created Moon Knight's weapons while time traveling, and I think that you have to mention that whenever you do a video on YouTube about Moon Knight. That's probably also some kind of law. Ain't comics fun? So, is Moon Knight Marvel's Batman? Well, I can say for sure that he was not meant to be a Batman clone, at least not initially. However, adding in the crescent moon throwing weapons and his fortune, his cover as a rich high roller, and his high-tech armored suits, and he sure does have a lot in common with the Dark Knight. However, if you look past the surface stuff, the differences between the two are vast. Moon Knight's on-again, off-again mental illness, his maybe magical but also not magical origins, his superpowers that might just be delusions of grandeur, and the whole Egyptian moon theme all work together to make him very different from the Caped Crusader. Not to mention that Moon Knight will kill you dead. Batman, not so much. At least not anymore. Even the places where they each obtained their training are different. Batman was already rich and traveled the world seeking out training, much of it provided by the League of Shadows, depending on your chosen continuity. Meanwhile, Moon Knight was trained by simply working as a boxer, a marine, an intelligence agent, and a mercenary, not becoming rich until his mercenary days, and he still needed to make some investments once he became Moon Knight to keep that money coming. To me, Moon Knight is much more than simply Marvel's Batman. He's Moon Knight, the vengeance of the moon god. So, where does that leave us? Will we ever see Moon Knight in the MCU or in his own TV series? Well, speculation about Moon Knight in the MCU was rampant after Captain America: The Winter Soldier. In the movie, Sitwell mentioned both Bruce Banner and Stephen Strange, and this was before the Doctor Strange movie had even been announced. In that same scene, he also mentioned a TV anchor in Cairo, and many people took this mention of Egypt to be a hint that Moon Knight would get his own solo MCU film. Captain America: Civil War also dropped a reference to Egypt when Secretary Thunderbolt Ross shows the Avengers the incidents that they were, in his view, at least somewhat partially responsible for. There are a few that we haven't seen before, including Egypt. Even more recently, Avengers Endgame writer Stephen McFeely said in an interview that they want to bring Moon Knight to life in the next phase of the MCU. It all sounds very promising, but let me end on this quote from Marvel Studio head Kevin Feige. When asked about whether or not he had any plans for Moon Knight, he said, quote, "Yes. Does that mean 5 years from now? 10 years from now? 15 years from now?" There are stacks of character cards that we have in our development offices, which we look at, which we pull from, which we discussed. End quote. Yeah, so for as long as there have been comic book adaptations, there's also been speculation about Moon Knight. It will happen, but for now, I'm not holding my breath. This video was made possible by our lovely patrons on Patreon. Specifically, this one goes out to Rachel, who suggested the topic. You can support the channel at patreon.com/fancyteeth and get a video made in a topic of your choice for as little as $1 a month. If you can't afford Patreon, then you can still be a huge help by sharing this video on Twitter, Facebook, or Reddit. You can also come chat with me directly on Discord, link in the doobly-doo. Thank you for making it to the end of the video, and until next time, be kind to each other. I'm Jay Parks.